Hey everybody, welcome back to the Kings of the Queen City podcast. I am here with our host Zach, and it's Matt. I haven't been on in a little while, but took a little bit of time off to school. We're both graduating college, so we've been pretty busy in our lives and things like that. So we're back. We had a lot of stuff that we wanted to cover, but today we're going to focus mostly on a really small NFL draft recap, as I was this past weekend. We're going to talk about our power rankings for the NFL after all the free agency moves of the season. It's gotten really crazy in the NFL, and we have as Zach pulled up here, our tier list for all of the NFL teams. We'll go by division. And we're also going to give at the end, we're going to switch up from the NFL. NHL playoffs just started today. We're both big hockey guys too. So we're going to give our picks for the Stanley Cup playoffs as well.
Alrighty, let me just get these names typed in real quick, and then we can just update it as we go. All right, we'll do that in a sec. All right, so you want to start with the AFC East then, talking about some divisional rankings where we think teams are going to finish in that. I'll pull up the free agency tracker because I know free agents have a big impact on power rankings, especially early in the season. Before we actually start ranking, I just want to say every team in the AFC East made a lot of moves and a lot of moves that were very good for their team. They fit holes. They signed at least serviceable players, if not good players. And while I do already have a preemptive ranking of 1 through 4 in my head, I can see that being totally mixed up just based off the moves that were made so far between these 4 teams.
Yeah, definitely something that is going to be a common theme here as we go along. The AFC has just become the absolute powerhouse of the NFL. That's not just the East, that's everybody in the AFC. Pretty much all these big free agent names have come to this conference now. The NFC is really a conference that's wide open. But starting with the AFC East, we're going to talk about our hometown Buffalo Bills first. A little bit of a quieter offseason, I guess you could say, in terms of free agents for the Bills. Just not a lot of money to spend. Some guys came back that were former Bills, and it's nice to see. I'm really excited about Matt Barkley being back. He's one of my favorite former Bills. He's a good locker room guy to have.
I was just gonna say, great locker room guy.
I think the biggest signing for the Bills came in O.J. Howard.
Yeah,
I think it flies a little bit under the radar for them, and also Tim Settle. Replacing not Kyle Williams. Wow, that was a while ago. Harrison Phillips, I'm sorry. And Jamison Crowder was a nice little pickup, even though Cole Beasley is no longer with the Bills. But talking about our rankings for the AFC East, for me, I think Zach would agree with this one. I don't think there's much discussion that would be had about it. Even though there was a lot of movement and a lot of good moves made in this division, I still think the Bills are at the top of the AFC East.
I would agree. Just for clarification too, if you are watching this on YouTube, we're ranking it 1 through 4 from left to right inside the tiers. So like Matt said, and I would agree, I think even though every team made good moves, the Bills are still going to finish first in the division.
Yeah, and definitely obviously the playoff team from the AFC East, first team to make the playoffs. We're not going to get into records or anything right now. I think that'll be something that we do after, because we would have to look at the schedules of everybody. But again, not a lot of moves, but good, solid moves, and then a decent draft by the Bills. Obviously, picking up a corner in the first round was huge after Levi Wallace, who me and Zach are both not really huge fans of, left for Pittsburgh. So now we have somebody to play alongside Tre'Davious White, which is huge. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Second in the AFC East. Sorry, I'm looking over at my board left and right here. I got all kinds of sports stuff going on. Me and Zach talked about it. Me and Zach might have a disagreement here, but I'm going to go with the Dolphins finishing second in the AFC East.
I also agree. That's who I had second.
Yeah, I think that they made a lot of good moves. I think money was a big thing for the Dolphins. They spent a lot of money this offseason. Obviously, everybody's going to look at the Tyreek Hill signing and trade. And that's a lot of money to throw at Tyreek Hill. But now you're talking about a team that has a questionable quarterback, obviously. They do have Bridgewater now, but Tua is still their guy. They're going to have a first-year head coach with them. And I'll be interested to see how they do. But I do think that even if Tua or Teddy Bridgewater, whoever plays, is average or even slightly below average, I still think that they're a team that's going to make a little bit of noise in the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as we know, Tyreek Hill benefits from an offense that's very pass heavy, but also that has a quarterback that can make almost every throw on the field. And coming from a QB who's servicing you like Pat Mahomes to Teddy Bridgewater or Tua, he's just not going to get the same. In my opinion, I could be totally proven wrong here, but I just don't see him getting the same stat lines, giving out the same production as he did in Kansas City. Also, though, the pickup of Chase Edmonds, I really like that at running back. He is very underrated in my opinion. And behind an O-line that is now, I mean, their O-line's pretty bad, but it's now reinforced with Teron Armstead, who is a very good tackle, including also the signing of, people like Connor Williams, among others. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a boost, and they'll hopefully be able to have both a passing as well as a rushing offense, which then, it can open the door for people like Tyreek Hill, where if they get an effective running game going behind this reinforced O-line, then they could actually have the opportunity to throw play action plays in there and actually make some noise on offense in the air. Additionally, too, I know Xavier Howard, the reports the last 2 years are that he just doesn't want to be there anymore. He wants to get traded. He wants to leave. But whatever the hell those reports are clearly don't matter, because he just, as seen here, signed a new contract. So he's still going to be with them. And I mean, you can say whatever you like about him. He is a very good cornerback. So that's going to be a big help on defense that he's still there now. And you see here, they brought in some reinforcements. They re-signed Emmanuel Agba, who had a decent season for them. They brought in 3 more linebackers on top of Jerome Baker, who's already pretty decent for them. So Miami's definitely going to be looking to, pester the Bills a little more. They've been doing that for the last couple of years now, creeping up on the win column a little bit more. The AFC East was, in my opinion, fairly competitive last year, despite, how some of the records might have shown. And so, this Miami team is definitely going to be even more of a threat than we thought they would be last year. So,
yeah, no, I completely agree. Bills fans love to joke about it because Josh Allen has had such good success against the Miami Dolphins, saying on Twitter, oh, Josh Allen is the Dolphins' daddy, things like that. But no, I really do think that the Dolphins are a team to keep an eye on this year. Maybe not in terms of their overall record, but definitely in the AFC. They're a team that does always kind of give the Bills a little bit of trouble. And even this past season, when people thought the gap was so big between the Bills and the Dolphins, I remember the game in Orchard Park. I was actually at that game. It was a terrible effort by the Bills in the first half. The defense looked terrible. We've had a couple games like that in the past couple of years where the defense just doesn't start the game strong, and it's bad, but we usually bounce back from it. We ended up bouncing back in that game, but it wasn't a blowout like people think. And I do think that, you talk about Tyreek Hill not getting the numbers he did with Patrick Mahomes. I 100% agree with that. The reason I think it's so dangerous for them is you just added the fastest wide receiver in the game. You're not going to be seeing Tyreek Hill running downfield catching 70-yard passes. It's going to be a little dump off and Tyreek Hill run after catch.
Yeah.
So definitely Miami number 2 for me. But moving on to the number 3 spot, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. Who do you have?
So I do have the Patriots finishing in third. I like some of the moves that the Jets made, but the Patriots brought back some important pieces. They signed some new important pieces. Mac Jones, as we saw last year, is going to grow into a very good quarterback. And they brought in receivers to help out. I know Ty Montgomery is listed as a running back, but he is a very good receiving back. Devontae Parker, a little overrated in the last couple of years because he's been injury hurt, even though he's been like quote unquote Miami's number one since Jarvis Landry left. But he is still a decent receiver nonetheless. And now they re-signed Trent Brown, so they're going to keep some of that reinforced O-line. And then bringing back Devin McCourty too. He might be old, but he is still one of the best safeties in the league, and that was important for them on defense. Jabril Peppers, I don't know. He was hyped up coming out of the draft. He got traded from the Browns after like a year or two. Wasn't the best in New York, but he is a very hard hitting safety. So if he's able to grow and learn under Devin McCourty, then they could definitely make a formidable two pair back there. But yeah, like I said, compared to some of the reinforcements you see here with the Jets did bring in a lot of good moves. I just see the Patriots more or less kind of picking up where they left off last season, looking to challenge. Even if that is finishing third, they're still going to be a nuisance, especially to, the Bills in the long run.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think that even though I'm giving the number 2 spot to Miami right now, I absolutely can see it flip-flopping back and forth between Miami and New England all year. I'm not the biggest Mac Jones fan. We've talked about it before, but I do think that Mac Jones is a very decent quarterback. I think that he's very serviceable, and he's a guy that is definitely, even in his bad years, I still think he's a 500 quarterback. It does depend on the team around him. They did make some good moves this offseason, but nothing that really jumps off the page in terms of moves that they made. So they were one of the AFC teams that I kind of categorized as a little bit quieter. Obviously, you still have Bill Belichick coming back, and there are questions about how he has performed since Tom Brady's left. But it's still the Patriots, and I still think that they're ranked above the Jets. And look, everybody likes to make fun of the Jets, and I know people in my life that are Jets fans, and we have the fun back and forth banter. But don't sleep on the Jets. Don't think that they're going to be a 2-15 team this year. I don't think that that's going to be the case at all. I just think that with the moves that they've made, they have such a gap between veteran and rookies that it's going to be a big learning experience for them. And we're going into Zach Wilson's second year. I thought Zach Wilson was decent. We need to see more out of him, but there's not enough on tape to put the jury out on him whether he's a good or bad quarterback right now. So I think that this is a learning experience for the Jets. And out of the AFC East, I know that these numbers are not going to equal like the playoff teams exactly, like how many teams make the playoffs. But for me, I see Buffalo, Miami, and New England, all 3 out of 4 of those teams in that division being potential playoff teams.
Okay. So we would say then, even though with the moves, we'd still say Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets.
Yeah, I think that the Patriots being in the third spot, and like I said, that back and forth between them and the Dolphins, I think is going to happen all year. I think that the Dolphins, just because of their history and the way that they are, like you look at matchups, the Dolphins do for some reason perform well against the Patriots. So I think that they'll have that divisional lead on them, and if it comes down to it, that will help propel them.
All right. So now moving on to the AFC North, we will start with the Baltimore Ravens. Here you can see a relatively small, light free agency. It was more of a signing a bunch of players back rather than picking up a bunch of free agents. However, the players that they brought back, along with bringing in Marcus Williams at safety to fill one of those holes, is huge, because they drafted Kyle Hamilton in the draft. They had an excellent draft. They filled a lot of holes that needed to be filled that weren't filled in free agency. And these players that they brought back, while they are older, they're still good. Michael Pierce, I think he was what, with the Vikings, right? Coming back to, I think, was he coming back to the Ravens?
I think so. I think he was with them before.
Okay. Yeah, either way though, very good interior D lineman. Calais Campbell, yes, while he is older, he is a monster. He's huge. He's good at disrupting the run, no doubt about that. Patrick Ricard, one of the best fullbacks in the league, huge bruiser guy, will gladly throw his body around just for blocks. And then Morgan Moses, he is a much older O lineman, but he has that experience. And he can definitely hold it down when he has a serviceable team around him. This team is looking really good. And honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if they do win. I haven't really looked at the AFC North too much, but I'd say unless Deshaun Watson is able to play this season, the Ravens are going to win this division.
Okay. So
I would have the Browns on top, but I can't put them there yet because we still don't know if Deshaun Watson is going to play now.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Things have definitely changed for me since free agency and even the draft. Something that is not going to show up here on the Ravens, and we can't take this into account in terms of our power rankings because really nothing has happened to this point. But things in Baltimore could go from what looks like very optimistic for this season to ugly quickly. And if you are a football fan, you should be picking up on what I'm putting down here. Has to do with the Marquise Brown trade. And look, I don't think trading Marquise Brown hurts the Ravens that much. I really don't. He's a good receiver. Don't get me wrong. He's a really good receiver, and I like him a lot. But the fact of the matter is Lamar Jackson is going to need a contract extension soon. And it sounds like they did not notify Lamar Jackson whatsoever that this Marquise Brown deal was going to go down, and he was not happy about it on Twitter at the draft. I think if that becomes an issue and you have an unhappy quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who I still think is overrated, but even though that I think he's overrated, I still think he's a phenomenal quarterback. That's going to hurt things in Baltimore. So for me, right now, the number one team in the AFC North is still going to be the Bengals for me, just because they did add some really good pieces this offseason. Not a fan of bringing Eli Apple back after everything that happened with Eli Apple last year. But they really didn't get worse, and the improvements they made are not improvements that are questionable. They're safe bets. Joe Burrow really is that guy. Like, I know people are riding the train a little bit too high on Joe Burrow. I understand he made the Super Bowl. A lot of things happen to get to the Super Bowl. Yes, he went through some very good teams in the playoffs, and yes, teams can get hot in the playoffs. But I do think that Joe Burrow has a really elite skill set. So for me, I still have Cincy at 1. It's really close. But the Ravens are definitely 2. And those 2 are my playoff teams out of that division for sure. And then moving on to the third team, I don't know how you feel about this. I know that you're riding them a little bit higher. But for me, I cannot see Cleveland finishing very good this year.
Okay.
To me, everything that is going on with Deshaun Watson, there's no reason for any football fan to believe that he's going to play. It's honestly not good to see the amount of support that he's received from Browns fans with everything that is going on with these criminal cases. It just goes to show you that if you're good, people tend to forget about everything like that. And I'm a person that's totally for second chances and things like that. And I think that they should be given to people. But in this case, I just find it hard to believe that 23 or 22 or 23, whatever the number is at now, criminal cases is hard to sit at there at some and look at somebody and go, Well, I don't know if they did it or not. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty, but that's a pretty big number. That, with all that being said about Deshaun Watson, you went out and got Deshaun Watson. If for some reason these criminal cases go through, he's found guilty, he can't play in the NFL. You have Baker Mayfield still, who they haven't moved on from yet, but he's extremely unhappy. And I don't blame Baker Mayfield one bit.
Agreed.
Baker Mayfield's a great quarterback. The disrespect that he's been treated with by the Browns organization is terrible. And to not move him already, if you're fully investing in Deshaun Watson, which they are, their front office has made that clear that they are doing that, then you should have the respect to move on from Baker Mayfield, but yet they're going to let him sit and do nothing. But these moves that they've made in this offseason have really boggled my mind, right? Like, I look at this list and I think, okay, Amari Cooper, good pickup. But you lost OBJ last year. You lost Jarvis Landry this offseason. That hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You still have Chubb and Hunt. Now, I believe it was Chubb that dealt with the injury again this year. Or was it
they both kind of did at the end. Chubb had a slight, I want to say it was either a hamstring or a groin issue. And then Kareem Hunt was dealing with an ankle problem for like the last 4 weeks of the season.
Right.
But that being said, I feel like they both stay relatively healthy given the workload split.
Oh, absolutely.
Most of the season.
Absolutely. But I just feel like this team has become a team that you have two good running backs now. And again, we talk about the issues off the field. Still not real happy with Kareem Hunt getting the load that he does with all of his off-field issues either. But can't change what's being done. The fact that the two of them split that much of a workload and they have the production that they do have two very good running backs, but it feels like a team that's going to be turning to the ground, right? So you go out and you get Deshaun Watson, and it's not about the player at this point. I'm just talking about the principle. They're investing that much money into a quarterback, but they're not surrounding him with amazing wide receiver weapons. Like Amari Cooper is really good, but he's also older. So you're not really adding the weapons that you should be for a player of that caliber, right? So it feels like this is going to be a ground and pound team. And if that's the case, if that's what they're trying to make the Browns, then their chances of achieving great things in the playoffs for me go down the drain with that. I do like the Chase Winovich signing. I think that's a really good move. Denzel Ward coming back obviously was big. And David Njoku getting that franchise tag that helps them out a little bit, but just no moves here that really jump off the page to me that scream, oh, we're a team that was really bad. We had playoff hopes with Baker, and now, aside from everything I've said about Deshaun Watson, if Deshaun Watson's there, to me, it still doesn't feel like a team that's going to make that jump.
Right. Yeah, like you said with the ground and pound too, it does seem a little bit like, they are two great running backs and they can get it done, but the teams, at least in the AFC North, have good interior linemen. You see the Steelers with TJ Watt on the outside and Cameron Hayward in the middle. Cameron Hayward can single-handedly stop an entire run play by himself. You see the the Ravens re-signing Michael Pierce and Calais Campbell, two very good run stoppers. And I mean, the Bengals, they're not the best at stopping the run per se, but you saw their defense take a good jump. Trey Hendrickson is pretty good on the outside with them. So it's like each team, at least that they're going to be playing twice a year, has, a front seven that is at least good enough to stop the run. So if the whole run gets shut down, then like you said, Deshaun, if he plays, or whoever the QB is, whether it is then a Baker or Brissett, whoever's throwing the ball only really has two targets in the two that they just signed. I think they still have Peoples Jones, right? He's all right. He's average.
He's all right, but the thing is you can't count on a guy like that to step into a big role.
Agreed.
So to me, that's where I put them. And I don't see them as a playoff team, to be honest with you.
So do you have them in third or fourth?
For me, the Browns are in third,
Okay. So you have the
and
Steelers
and
finishing last.
it's a lot of back and forth with the Ravens, and I think it depends on what happens before the season starts with the Ravens. Obviously that leaves the Steelers. I think, before we got into our discussion, you had them in fourth as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is I'm excited about the Steelers. I think they made some good moves, right? They're a team that is coming off of some very good years. They kind of hit a bump. They're in that downswing. Roethlisberger's gone now. Juju Smith-Schuster's gone now. This is a little bit of a revamp for them. I wouldn't call it a rebuild because I still think that they have some good pieces on the team. Just a revamp and a retooling.
Yeah.
And I just want to say two things about the quarterback situation. Well, three things about the quarterback situation with the Steelers. Kenny Pickett's, I thought, was a really good pick.
Yep.
I love Mitchell Trubisky going there. I think that people in the NFL are sleeping big time on Mitchell Trubisky. Now, I'm not saying this guy's going to come out and light the league on fire. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that the narrative out there about Mitchell Trubisky is that he's a terrible quarterback. That's not the case.
Yeah.
I understand he was a backup with the Bills last year. I understand he played 10 snaps maybe. But when you're behind Josh Allen, you don't need to play those snaps, right? So he learned, he got himself back. I think this is a good chance for him to get his career back on track. He's going to have to compete for the starting job with Kenny Pickett's. And I just think he's better than people give him credit for. And also, one last thing about the quarterback, too. Another guy that they signed that I think would have really helped with the internal competition, and it's really sad and it's a terrible situation for the family and NFL fans, was Dwayne Haskins signing with them, and obviously his recent passing. I was a fan of Dwayne Haskins. I thought that he had the tools, but he didn't have the structure, I think.
Probably.
Yeah, and his confidence, I think, was a little shaken with the Commanders. And I thought that maybe here in Pittsburgh, it would have been a really good chance for him to rebound. And it's unfortunate that obviously things worked out the way that they did with his passing. But with that being said, I still think the Steelers they're not going to be a bottom feeder team. They're going to be decent.
Agreed. And even though we both have them finishing last, like you said, they made some good signings for a revamp, bringing in Miles Jack. I think Miles Jack is still a little underrated because he was on a team that sucked so bad.
100%.
He's a good linebacker. Bringing back Robert Spillane, he played pretty well for them last year, despite their defense being on the field for so long each game. And then making sure that Terrell Edmonds comes back. He's looking like a good safety back there with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then I don't know. I thought Carl Joseph wasn't the worst last year with the Browns either. So those would be some pickups for the secondary. But yeah, like you said, I don't think they're too far off from re-becoming the kings of the AFC North again. But I'd say within the next 5 years, look for them to become a more dominant team again.
Oh yeah, and the thing is too, out of all the AFC divisions here, I think that aside from the West, which we'll get to, I think that it's close, but with the AFC East, I think that the AFC North is tied for that second toughest division in the AFC right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So before we get to the AFC South real quick, unfortunately, even though I said what I said, my Zoom subscription still says that I only get 40-minute time periods for the meetings. So we're going to cut this off as one episode, and then I'm going to restart it, and Matt and I are going to come back as a second episode, and we're going to do the AFC South as well as the AFC West. And if that brings us to 40 minutes as well, then just be on the lookout for consecutive episodes that also cover the NFC. But we're gonna end this episode right here, and then the next episode we're gonna cover the AFC South rankings as well as the AFC West. So we will see you guys in the next one.
Why does it only let you get 40? It's so weird.